Good day, sir. We are the chapter 14, and the title of our chapter is Women and Work in the Philippines. The learning outcomes. At the end of this chapter, the students should be able to identify the major problems women face in the labor and livelihood sectors. Number 2, explain the value of equality in the sphere of work and labor for women. And the last is, list the policies that protect women's rights in the sphere of work and livelihood. The saying, a woman's work is never done, rings true given the current state of our world. Women contribute to the economy in all forms, from those who work in the productive sphere to those who support workers in the reproductive sphere. The impact of women is present in development, specifically in terms of the economy. One option to mitigate this concern is to have gender-responsive policies in the workplace that allow both women and men to fulfill their duties at home. Policies may include granting maternity and paternity leaves and promoting men's participation in reproductive work. Women are key contributors to the economy and to combating poverty through both remunerated and enumerated work at home, in the community, and in the workplace. Growing numbers of women have achieved economic independence through gainful employment. So, in the other words, all of the women that achieve their freedom in the economy are given an opportunity that having their job. What makes women so different from men such that they lag behind in terms of work? By discussing the various women at work, specifically, the following issues will be discussed. Women in the productive sphere and the reproductive sphere, the sex-gender system, the valuation of care work, and laws about women and work. Lastly, issues that certain sectors face in the Philippines will be given special attention. These sectors include the informal and formal sectors, the agriculture sector, and the OFW sector. The right to decent work. The Magna Carta of Women states that women have the right to decent work. Specifically, Section 22 of the Magna Carta asserts that the state shall progress, civilly realize and ensure decent work standards for women that involve the creation of jobs of acceptable quality in conditions of freedom, equity, security, and human dignity. Women have a chance to choose their standard when it comes in work. The one that accepts quality for women is in condition of freedom, equity, security, and human dignity. For the freedom, women are capable of choose what kind of job they want. Security is the one important of all in the woman to stay out in harm's way. The equity is the process of fair men and women in their duties. Human dignity is one of the respective attitude towards in our economy. Decent work involves opportunities for work that are productive and fairly remunerative as family living wage, security in the workplace, and social protection for families. Better prospects for personal development and social integration. Freedom for people to express their concerns, organize, participate in the decisions that affect their lives, and equality of opportunity and treatment for all women and men. Multiple burden of women. Women joining the labor force still have to attend to their reproductive roles at home. Having both reproductive and productive work is what feminists call the double day or multiple burden. Household chores include cooking, cleaning, washing the dishes, childcare, and caring for the elderly or sick persons of their homes. The valuation of care work. While many studies on care work discuss the ways of influence culture and society so that both men and women can do care work, should be valued regardless of who performs it. Care or reproductive work is the best of society. Honestly, both men and women can do a work because what men can do also women can do. But men are more advantaged because their body are strong enough than women. But women are more advantaged. It's because they are independent and confident in their work. The valuation of this traditionally gendered task must be given importance in order for true gender justice to prevail. Women working in care industries must be valued both as workers and as women who are working to support their own family. Mechanisms must be put in place to address their true gender needs as care workers and workers with workers' rights. Women-friendly workspaces. A gender-responsive organization gives importance to women's true gender needs.
The Asian Development Bank cites agriculture as the second largest sector for women's employment in the Philippines, specifically 64% of workers in the rice and corn subsector and 64% of workers in the fisheries sector were women. Philippine government data in 2012 showed that only 29% of the 2.3 million agrarian reform beneficiaries who were granted certificates of land ownership award CLOA were women. Migrant women, many Filipino, including the younger generations, aspire to go abroad as overseas Filipino workers OFW. In such territories as the Middle East, Europe, or the U.S., more than 10.4 million Filipinos or greater than 10% of the national population are based abroad. The Philippines deployed some 2.2 million OFW in 2012 alone, almost 50% of which were women.
43% of the OFWs employed in the 2012 worked in the Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. In the Singapore, most of them came from Luzon, especially from the Calabar Zone Region 4A and the Central Luzon Region 3. More than 60% of OFWs were the women, majority were the involved in the domestic of care work. The Women Edge Plan also identifies the de-skilling of professionals as an issue. As such, a project in the Balik Pinay Balik Hanap Buhay project, Return Filipina, Return Their Livelihood, and aims to assist in the The integration of the women overseas workers in the term of skills, training, and entrepreneurship and other business-related topics once they return to the Philippines. Women informal sector. Members of the informal sector are classified as an individual that they remain employed but are able to create their own employment without access to training and credits. Member the informal sector. Main goals is not to earn extra income but mostly to meet a daily needs. 70% the jobs of the Philippines come from the informal sector. They separate the chance to get opportunities concerning work. Women often enter informal work that lacks access to social protection in the productive resources, expose them to poor working conditions, and limits their representation in the many diseases in making structures. While some approaches have been formulated by various agencies, cases to the issue in the informal sector women, the underrepresented and the often include from facility processes. It is supported by the combination that the more and capable matters of business and finance. Sex industry is viewed as a fundamentally female issue because the most sex workers are female and the most buyers are male. This applies to both gender, reactional sex and the sex outside of marriage was the only socially acceptable men but not women. This is termed the double standard of sex. Warida, mentally or concubinage, where women were accepted to express their socially in the marriage. Women in the domestic sphere. The sex-gender system that was defined by bio data highlights in the divide between the productive and sphere. The productive sphere. Productive sphere is the women place where she is said to have power and the authority. Domestic and domestic workers. The separation of reproductive and productive work puts domestic workers in the rather odd position. Domestic workers do care work, the very same task they assume in their own home. In 2010, 84.5% of domestic workers in the private home were women. 82.1% of them were employed as allied in domestic workers. 7 women dominated this industry, but they earned less per day. 23.20 versus 108.17 for male domestic workers, despite rendering slightly more time per week than their male counterparts. 52.1 versus 51.4 hour. The sex trade. When talking about the sex industry, one usually refers to the reproductive activity called coitus or sex in exchange for pay.